our next speaker is Harry Barton, so I'll welcome up. And Harry is another researcher studying for her PhD at Tyndall Manchester.
Hi, and thanks for staying till the end. I promise this is the last time you're going to have to look at this slide deck. Okay, cool. So yeah, I'm Harry Barton. My PhD is looking at accelerating city-level climate action, developing and trialling city-level decarbonisation projects and interventions. But today I'm going to be talking a bit about the lessons I've learned from working with my partial funder, who are the GMCA, which is the Greater Manchester Combined Authority. Cool, so in the presentation I'm just going to talk a bit about my project and its aims, then I'm going to talk about the context and the methods I've been using, and then I'm going to talk about who the GMCA are, working with them, what I've learned so far, and then some conclusions and further research, and then there'll be time for questions hopefully at the end. Okay, so the aims of this project are kind of split in two. There's kind of academic aims, and then there's kind of aims for the GMCA or deliverables for the GMCA. So one of the academic aims is to highlight the need for better city-to-city learning for decarbonisation and to help streamline this process. And then one of the GMCA aims is to prioritise the most useful and transferable insights from other cities for Greater Manchester. And then another GMCA one is developing new climate action projects in Greater Manchester to help decarbonise. And then another academic one is to observe these projects in reality and see whether the learning they wanted to do actually took place in real life. Cool. So I'm just going to go through the context. Sorry, I'm really nervous, so I'm shaking a bit. So for climate, these are the three streams of my project. So it's climate, decision making and learning. So for climate, cities are going to play a pivotal role in our transition to a low carbon society. There's a huge pool of resources available for better understanding and implementation of city-level decarbonisation projects. And cities are a good medium between national governments and grassroots organisations. So like national governments don't have the local knowledge they need, but they might have lots of cash available, and local grassroots organisations have got all the local knowledge and networks they need for a successful project, but they might not have the money they need to implement them successfully. So cities are kind of a good in-between in that regard. So for decision making, so local authorities are fast-paced work environments, and lots of the staff have lots of demands on their time, and they've got really limited resources. So deciding on which projects to implement at the city level is a complex and difficult job. And there's a wide range of decision-making methods available for them to use. And there's also research on how to make the decision of which decision-making tool to use. But there's less information about how climate strategies and interventions are selected in real-world context. So another element adding to the difficulties of these decisions are the preferences of the people who make the decisions. So informal discussions and systems, which are sometimes called water cooler chats, can have a huge impact on which decisions get made and which projects get funded. So all of these factors impact the decisions at the city level and which projects are going to get decarbonised. So for learning, cities that are facilitating these projects have got a wealth of knowledge they could share with others. Transnational municipal networks and local governments are keen to decarbonise and increase their networks and connectivity between the two things. For instance, this year there's been a project set up called the Urban Transitions Mission. I don't think whoever came up with that name ever said it out loud. But the city learning process hasn't really been formalised, and this is a really big missed opportunity for decision makers who could impact sustainability of their local region. So I think more attention should be paid to the opportunities of case studies, and these are the three research streams of my project. Cool. So speaking of case studies, to start off my project, I collated a list of 180 projects from around the world. You can access this as an open access resource, and then I categorized them based on the GMCA's key areas of environmental, of what they wanted to decarbonise, So the categories are transport, energy, buildings, natural environment, resilience, resources, and then I added other for any of the projects that didn't really fit into those categories. So this is just a snapshot from the long list. yeah, you can access the data set if you so wish. And then I just mapped the projects across the world. As you can see, there's a huge cluster in Europe, and that's one of the limitations of my research, is the fact that I got all the data sets from places like Carbon Disclosure Project, but also C40 cities, and obviously projects that don't have the time or resources to upload their data to websites like that won't have been collected in my data set. So yeah, that's one of the limitations. And then I just mapped the categories on a really simple chart to show which ones are the most prolific across the world. As you can see, buildings, energy and transport are the highest, which is quite encouraging because they are the areas we really need to work on. So yeah, this is just an overview of the framework I designed to narrow down the best projects for Greater Manchester, because obviously they can't do all 180 projects at once. So in the first stage, the project has to meet these 4 criteria. So does the project have potential or delivered carbon? Is it innovative or transformational? Does the local authority have enough influence to implement that project effectively? And is it transferable to the local region? So then in the stage 2 for the learning priorities of the region, this is where the co-design aspect of my project comes in. So I co-designed bespoke criteria for Greater Manchester with their low carbon team. So then I created another set of things that you related the shorter list with to narrow it down even more, but it would be based on what the priorities are of the GMCA, so they would get the most out of it, and using their local knowledge and expert knowledge from the low carbon team, they would be able to decide on the best projects to transfer over. So this created a hotspots table of the most relevant projects for Greater Manchester based on what they want to learn. So basically it's things like, if you wanted to look at a transport project that had lots of co-benefits but was very cheap, you would filter for transport, you'd filter for high in the co-benefits column, and then you'd filter for low in the price column, and then you'd get a list of projects that you could use. Cool, okay, I'm just going to talk about Greater Manchester now. So who are the GMCA? They're the Greater Manchester Combined Authority. They oversee the 10 areas of Greater Manchester, and they work on things together like transport. So it's 2 cities and 8 boroughs, although boroughs is not actually a term that's official. Nobody really knows what the other districts are called, but I've gone for boroughs in this presentation. So yeah, it's got a population of about 2.8 million and a bigger economy than all of Wales. Eamon Bolan is the chief exec and Andy Burnham is the Metro Mayor. Cool, so the initial work I did with the GMCA, so my PhD was actually designed collaboratively with the GMCA, and members of the GMCA were on my interview panel. So once I'd accepted the role, I was introduced to members of the environment team at the GMCA, and there's 3 key strands of the environment team. So there's natural environment, sustainable consumption and production, and then the low carbon team, which is the team that I sit within. And I got introduced to the concept of their 5-year environment plan. So the current 5-year environment plan is coming to an end very soon, and the new one's going to be published in hopefully autumn 2024. But yeah, this is just a plan that outlines all of the projects and targets for Greater Manchester as a whole to create a more sustainable city region. So this is a really cool part of my project. I've actually been able to contribute to the next 5-year environment plan. So I took 5 of the most interesting and innovative projects from my long list, and I'm going to talk about them in the 5-year environment plan just as an example of other cities that are doing really great sustainability work. So I chose rooftop solar in Chennai, and I chose sustainable neighbourhoods in Freiburg, cycle superhighways in Copenhagen, clean construction techniques in Oslo, and prioritising walking and cycling in Fortaleza. Cool, so this slide just talks a bit about the things that have worked well so far and the lessons I've learned so far. So what's worked well? The enthusiasm of the environment team at the GMCA is really inspiring. They really do want to decarbonise the city region. The access I've had has been really great too, so I actually attend the low carbon team meetings every other week, and I go and work in the GMCA offices 1 day a week, and I get to sit with all those guys and chat to them about what they're working on. The growth of the team has also been really great. So I started my PhD in May 2022, and the low carbon team alone has doubled in size. So I think there's about 20 members now. And yeah, working on the 5-year environment plan's been really great. It means that I get to see a huge like regional document be created and see like the pitfalls and challenges of that, but also get to input my own research into a project like that. And I also get to put some of my research into some pilot projects that they're running at the moment, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, which I think is really great and it's really exciting, and it makes it, I'm not sure very many PhD researchers can say that their research is going to contribute to a project that's going on right now. But yeah, some of the lessons I've learned, I think confirming priorities with any external stakeholder is really important, to make sure you don't get your wires crossed and make sure you can confirm what you expect from them and what they expect from you. I wish I'd known a bit more about the funding streams of local government, because I think it was a bit naive of me to think, it was very naive of me to think that I was going to get any funding for pilot projects. So instead of starting a pilot project from the ground up, I'm actually just going to be joining a project that's already happening. I also think that, I haven't put it on the slide, but the number of meetings involved in local government is pretty crazy, and I think at the start of my PhD I should have felt more empowered to say no to some of them, because I spent a huge amount of my first year in meetings and like coming back and toing and froing, and I could have been working on my PhD project. Cool, so these are the projects I'm actually going to get to contribute to as part of my PhD. So I'm going to be working on a social housing decarbonisation fund project for whole house retrofit, so that's with the low carbon team at the GMCA. I'm also going to be helping Bury Council swap their streetlights for LED streetlights, because they haven't actually completed doing that yet. And I'm also going to get to work on the bus electrification rollout with Transport for Greater Manchester. And yeah, so the next steps in my research are going to be analysing some interviews I've done with different people at different local authorities across the world, based on the list of projects that were most transferable to Greater Manchester. I've also done a grey literature review on those projects, and then I'm going to create a bespoke best practice pathway for Greater Manchester to use these key learnings to help them decarbonise. Then I'm going to contribute to some pilot projects, and I'm going to use observational ethnography to see whether the GMCA actually learn and put into practice what they said they wanted to learn and put into practice. And that's it.
Any questions for Harry? Yep, at the back.
Yeah, not really a question as such, more of an observation. It's just that I think this is really interesting from a sort of devolution context. Because if you look at Andy Burnham, Manchester, and Andy Street in Birmingham, they're both really getting to grips with climate issues. And other cities, Leeds, Bristol, kind of being left behind. So I think it's really interesting to see how they interact, and especially those two. I mean, Street and Burnham are starting to work together, I think. So I think that's really important works.
Yeah, I think the Trailblazer devolution deal is going to be like a really big game changer for the GMCA, and like they're going to have so much more control over what they can spend their money on and stuff like that. So yeah, I think it's really important, like you say, and it's going to be hopefully really great.
Could you say a little bit more about the observational ethnography and what that's going to involve?
Yeah, so I haven't done the full methodology for that yet, but 'cause I'm going to be doing it next year. Basically, I'm going to look at, so I've got a list of things for each of the 3 organisations that I'm going to be working with, so that's Bury Council, TFGM and GMCA, and what they've said they wanted to learn from other innovative projects from around the world. So then I'm going to be able to do some, while I contribute to the project, it's going to be like participatory observation ethnography. While I contribute to the projects, I'll be making detailed field notes and about whether they actually implement the things they said they wanted to, and then I'll be able to analyse that at a later date and see whether, I hope the answer is yes, they did learn what they said they were going to learn, but we'll kind of have to see.
We just have a chat about doing that as well if you want.
Yeah, that would be great.
Thanks, Harry. How do you have any kind of reflections on what that would be like if you're kind of having to reflect back to people that you've spent 2 years seeing, sitting within the office once a week and kind of, getting to know in that capacity, to kind of be both sort of a researcher and a member of a team, how you navigate that kind of tension?
Yeah, I think it's going to be quite difficult. Like I said, the access I've had to, especially the low carbon teams, has been really great, and they're actually incredibly supportive of me doing this reflective piece of work because they want to learn about how things might go better in the future for them, and especially if I find anything to do with if the challenges they face and like the pitfalls they come across, they want to iron those out so they can then be a more like effective team. So yeah, I think it's going to be tough to start with, but I think once they get used to me like clacking away in all the meetings, then hopefully it'll be okay.
Any questions, Mike?
Is part of Greater Manchester's ability to do this down to the consistency? Like there was this slide earlier about the number of Chelsea managers that we had, and I guess there is a bit more of a longitudinal view because this has been an issue for a while. And do you feel like that's informing the ambitions of the environment team that you're working with, or what's the context there from a local political level?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know too much about it, but I do know that I think the fact that it's a priority of the mayors has really like bolstered the ideas of the environment team, because I think two of his main things are transport and I can't remember the other one, sorry, but he's very invested in this image of being an environmentally progressive person, well, city region really, not him himself. And I think that has really made it, given everyone the enthusiasm they need to take things to the next level. And I think the 5-year environment plan, I think 5 years is a great amount of time because it's not so long that you're like, oh, it's so far in the future that we don't need to worry about it. But it's not so short that you haven't got time to do anything effective. And I also know that the fact that Andy Burnham's running for another term, and if he gets in, like it kind of gives it the validity to carry on as is. But if he doesn't get in, I think that could be an issue, which will just like a bridge we'll have to cross, I guess.
Yeah, first of all, you did very well. So I was noticing you were saying. So obviously you are looking best practice or almost looking to learn from other cities, but is anyone approaching us to learn from us? Is anyone in the UK, or is something that hasn't come up in conversation yet, like any from other regions?
Yeah, no, I haven't actually heard that. I haven't heard of that for Greater Manchester yet. Maybe I'm just asking the wrong people. But yeah, I know that Andy Burnham he works really closely with Andy Street, who's Birmingham, and then he works really closely with the Mayor of Liverpool as well. And kind of the northern mayors have got like kind of a collaboration, and they do chat to each other a lot about different issues, especially on transport. Like transport is definitely one of the biggest issues that they're trying to tackle at the moment. But yeah, I haven't heard of anyone being like, you guys are amazing at that, I want to learn from you, but hopefully they will one day.
Yeah, wait for a year.
Yep. Probably final question.
I have a question regarding maladaptation. So maladaptation has been in the latest IPCC report actually one of the big concerns that we should be looking at, right? About those maybe unintended long-term consequences of projects, or unintended or involuntary consequences, negative consequences on certain population groups, while trying to implement a good idea. So my question is, do you have any other criteria that you can share with us about looking at this project that go beyond the agenda of the Greater Manchester, whatever it was called, beyond that you yourself implemented to weed out those projects that might have a risk of maladaptation?
Yeah, so it's a really good question. I haven't done anything specifically looking at that because the overall aim was to find projects that were for decarbonisation because of the low carbon team aspect of my work. But I have tried to put a huge emphasis on the co-benefits of each project individually, and quite a lot of the projects on this spreadsheet are actually from quite a long time ago. and they've still got they're still going, like they're still being implemented like this. That like, quite a long time ago is obviously a very woolly term, but they're not all of them are just really, really innovative and new. There's some that are proven to have worked for like 20 years, but the thing is, yeah, like I haven't looked at it specifically at whether they have caused maladaptation, but I've tried to emphasize the co-benefits and specifically the health benefits of each project going forward, because it's something I really care about and I'm really interested in, but it also looks very good for the GMCA in a political sense, because they're kind of two birds with one stone kind of thing.
Great, thank you very much. Please join me in thanking Harry.